All right, today we have a important topic to talk about because I hear this phrase a lot from people. I hear them say free software is free as in freedom and not as in price. And I would kind of like to dispel that. I've done it before, but there's a lot more to it. So, in free software, defined by Richard Stallman, you have four distinct freedoms. Uh, you have the Let me scroll down real quick. Uh, where'd it go? Yeah, here it is. All right, so you have four freedoms. I'm gonna zoom this in real quick. These are your four freedoms. You have the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose. This means, and this kind of goes against what some people would like in the GPL v3. There was a concerted effort to create this other part of the license where you could restrict companies or people, users, from using your software in ways that you find objectionable morally. And there probably should be a license for that, but it doesn't really belong in free software. You know what I mean? And that would definitely be considered non-free software. So what this means basically is, and the person who wrote the open source definition made this specific example. If you haven't seen Revolution OS, you can find it on YouTube. It's free. You can download it from archive.org. It's available everywhere, basically. I'm sure you can get a DVD if you really wanted it, but it's freely available all over the place. It's like a 40-minute, hour-long Linux documentary, and it had, I forget what his name was, but he talked about how with free software, if you are, say, an abortion rights activist, you cannot restrict a pro-life or anti-abortion activist from using your software of even for their own purposes, like for a political purpose. Your software must remain free for anybody to use for any purpose. The second freedom you have, though, so that's, that kind of dispels the whole political thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get to this in a bit. That doesn't mean you can't, say, ban somebody from development on your software. However, it does mean that the person must be able to fork your software. For example, if you are a group of abortion activists and you say, well, we don't want any pro-life activists developing our software with us, the pro-life activists have to be able to take your license and then make your software, but downstream, basically. That's what they have to be able to do. So second freedom you have is the freedom to study how the program works and change it so it does your computing as you wish, which means not only does your code have to be source available, but again, you have to be able to fork it or modify it. So this makes something like Fudo software where you're allowed to do that for personal use. That makes it non-free software because you would have to be able to redistribute the software, the free parts of the software, without their basically with their license. So what's happened though is with Fudo software like GrayJ, their code is source available, and I'm sure you can contribute patches to it if you want. But what happens is instead of using the Mozilla license, which Mozilla license basically says there are non-free parts to the software, which includes the Mozilla branding. But if you were to fork Firefox, you would be able to ship a browser under a different name. It can't be similar or like confusing with the name Firefox, and it can't use the Firefox logo. So if you made a browser called LibreWolf and you change the logo to a wolf, you're good to go. But GrayJ decided, and this really comes down to their monetary needs, is if they wanted to do that, because Louis Rossmann had come up with the example that NewPipe is under a permissive license. I think it's MIT or BSD. And what happened is people would try to download it, but you would find malware laden forks of it basically on the Play Store um, or like on Google or whatever, and it created confusion. So this is kind of like the problem that they had with Windows back in the day, where you would have a installer for a program from like Softpedia or whatever, and you would download an open source program like VLC. And this is an article I saw one time. Was people would say, oh, use VLC. VLC is a great video player, and it has no ads or anything, and people would download it on Windows from one of these sketchy websites, and the installer would install ass toolbar and all these spyware adware things onto their computer, and they would say, yeah, whenever I open up VLC it's full of ads, and so basically, like, there are licenses for that don't allow you to do that, but it's basically the same problem with NewPipe. Is people could fork the software and distribute it however they wanted, which would include malware. So Mozilla license would have fixed that. It would have still been a free software license, but there would be non-free components that were like copyrighted branding, basically. So third freedom is freedom to redistribute copies so you can help others. Now, observe this freedom, because this is the exact place where people get tripped up on, and they say free as in freedom, not free as in cost. You know what I mean? But the problem is, there are obviously programs that will charge money for the binary. So Zero Linux was an example of this, but he got in trouble because he also paywalled the source code, which he didn't own. It belonged to the Arch Linux developers. So he got in trouble because he was trying to paywall the source code, which must always be given out for free. And if I want to create my own binary out of it, I must be able to redistribute that binary also for free. So for example, uh, there is a piece of audio software on Linux, but I can't remember what it's called. It's not Reaper, it's like some other digital audio production software. And they do charge money for the binary, and you can buy the binary from their website. However, because it is free to redistribute, somebody has rebuilt the binary from scratch, like from source code, and they compiled it and distributed it on FlatHub all for free. And that makes it free software, where if you want to support them by downloading the binary, you can. But if you have Linux and you have a repository, you must be able to distribute the package for free. And that's what I mean. How are you going to compete with that? You know what I mean? Where anybody can set up a build server. Like, yeah, you're paying for the build time and whatever else, for compilation. And obviously you're supporting the project. But if somebody wants to fork it, they can also edit your source code and modify it and ship that for free, or they can just recompile your binary and ship it for free. And this actually leaves you with, there are still ways to commercialize free software, and we're going to get to that, but it must also remain free. You know what I mean? Free. And so your fourth freedom, though, is freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions to others. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I already read that one. No, I didn't. So the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions to others. So remember, I just said the freedom to redistribute copies so you can help others. You must also be able to fork it and distribute your forks to others. So this is where the GPL comes into play, is if you do fork GPL software, your license must also remain GPL, and your changes must be given back to upstream. So that does create a freedom respecting loop. This is something that copy center licenses do not do. And copy center basically means that it is a permissive license, whereas a copyright license would be. I'm trying to think of how that would work. You have copyright where the owner retains the rights to everything. You have copyleft where the owner does retain the rights, but they also give it out for free so long as the derivative product is also free. And then you have copy center where they don't really care either way, where you have a copyright, but you also allow anybody to do whatever they want to it. And this comes into play with Hyperlin because Vaxery has decided that he wanted to charge money for some aspect of Hyperlin. And he's kind of not left with that many options besides providing a service, because what he has done is he created a subscription service to allow you to talk to the developers on a super secret incel forum. And what you can also do is he gives you some dot files, which will obviously be leaked, so who cares? But basically, that is, you can commercialize free software, and what this means. So I'm actually going to read this entire section. Free software can be commercial. Free software does not mean non-commercial. On the contrary, a free program must be available for commercial use, commercial development, and commercial distribution. This policy of fundamental importance. Without this, free software cannot achieve its aims. So what happens is you can obviously make a Linux distribution, and you can provide support for it, or you can use it in a commercial environment. So, for example, Red Hat, SUSE, Canonical, Ubuntu Pro, that kind of thing, they don't sell the free parts of the system. You can't obviously paywall the source code of Ubuntu, but what you can do is you can offer security updates and a service for that called Ubuntu Pro. With SUSE and Red Hat, you can download the operating system for free, and as long as you have a free developer account, they will give you access to the source code. And that's just a way to kind of filter out, whatever. It's just a way to access it, but it is still free. And what's happened though is people have conflated that with charging money for the distribution, and that's not what they're doing. But if they did want to charge money for a binary, they could do that. Now, what Stallman is likely referring to here, though, is back in the day, and again, this is from Revolution OS, was he would go to these businesses and he would offer Emacs classes, basically, and he would teach them how to use Emacs and how to make it extensible and how to use it. And that company those classes for sale were monetizing free software. The software was still free, but you can charge money to teach people how to use it. And back in the 90s, you still see these today, where some OEMs and some system integrators will ship like System 76, or you can get like a Dell computer with Ubuntu on it or something, whatever it is. You have these companies that were trying to make workstations, and they were like, well, we're not going to use Windows on these. We're going to make these work with Linux so that people can have a Linux operating system on their workstation. And that became really popular in the 90s, and you had entire companies spawn out of system integration, basically, and creating these Linux computers. So the software still remains free, but you are able to sell a computer with free software on it. And that's actually why some distributions are under like EU regulation, is because there are products being shipped with this operating system. And another example too is, hopefully I can remember it off the top of my head, but I hope I remember that. I hope I remember this. I was just thinking about, oh yeah, so if you went to a store again in the 90s, you used to be able to pick up either a magazine with a Linux CD in it, or you could even go out and buy. Right now, you can go out on Amazon or wherever else, even some distribution websites, and they will sell you media with a verified ISO or whatever put onto the either flash drivers, DVD or CD or whatever, and you're literally selling the distribution on a CD. You know what I mean? You can even charge for the internet traffic if you really wanted to. However, the source code must remain free, and you must be able to distribute the distribution without paying if you decide you want to. So what we have is multiple avenues you can have to monetize free software, and obviously you can use any free software in commercial aspects. However, it doesn't mean you can use GPL software in something like a TiVo or whatever, and produce a non-free system out of free software and then ship it without giving source code back. So again, this is your four freedoms. Remember how uh, always remember this, that people will oftentimes misconstrue this as free does not mean free as in price. It always means free as in price, because without free as in price, you are not able to redistribute or fork. So remember that. You can sell things, but it must also be available for free to anybody that wants to collaborate or use your software. So I hope that has cleared up some confusion a bit, because a lot of people, every time I say that, free software, obviously trying to make money on free software isn't going to work out well for you. And they say, well, that doesn't mean you can't monetize it. I'm like, yeah, you can monetize whatever the fuck you want. But you do have to respect the license when you do it. And because of that, you are competing with free as in price all the time. So always remember that. All right, thanks.